It's funny, we did an in-app survey on like AI probably about a year ago now when it was like just emerging and everybody's talking about it. And just to get people's take on it. And one answer we got from a store manager just said Skynet. That's all they said. It was just like Terminator the movie. That was their response to AI.
Welcome to Restaurant 365 Presents Behind the Numbers, a show where we talk to restaurant owners, operators, accountants, everyone in between, just to find out the secret sauce that makes restaurants tick. I'm your host, Rich Sweeney.
And I'm Marc Cohen, and we're excited to be here today with Walid Jamal. Walid is the president of JHG Restaurants. He owns 4 IHOPs in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. He's looking to open another 3 in the coming years, and I don't want to give away too much about his origin story, but I'll tease it by saying when he and his brother were in their teens, they actually worked at one of the locations that he now owns. So this is one of those restaurant stories that I love to hear about because it's really that journey that we all take within this industry. So Walid, welcome. We're happy to be here. Episode number 1, you made it.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I think we're going to kick things off with sort of a big question just to get us in the right direction. So I'm curious, what's the most important thing that you sort of do in your day-to-day, your week-to-week, that you think sort of all owners, operators should be doing within your 4 walls?
You know, for me, I think the most important thing is, whenever you're actually physically within the 4 walls of the restaurants, constantly talking to every single employee that you can communicate with, obviously engage with the guest if you can, but speaking directly to your staff on a day-to-day basis, whether it's managers, whether it's servers, cooks, whoever it is, that has a huge impact because, it's important that they can feel that they have that contact with the actual ownership and above management. It's not just, them on the grounds and us not appreciating what they're doing. So I think to me that has the biggest impact, and you can almost immediately see results of that when you've had a good conversation with a staff member. So especially if you're speaking about the operations themselves, not just hello, how are you, hope everything's going well. So
right, a strong feedback loop that goes both ways.
Exactly.
I love that. So you said you had 4 locations. How many employees do you have?
Right now we're about 140 employees. It goes up and down just like any other restaurant industry, but hopefully we will, as we grow, we'll continue gaining a few more in preparation for that next growth phase.
Rich, you're a chef. How many eggs do you think these guys go through in a year?
Oh, geez. Let's see. 4 locations, IHOP, so maybe you guys do a couple eggs here and there. I feel like I'm going to undershoot it even if I say some massive number. So I'll go with at least 500 dozen at each location.
Per week?
Per month? Per week? Is it per week? That would be insane. That's a lot of eggs.
It's a PG
show. So it
show.
depends on, it depends on what you're, if you're using shelled eggs or liquid eggs, we use obviously both. I mean, we go through about 56,000 shelled eggs probably a year. That excludes the liquid eggs. So, liquid eggs are a little bit tough to, not to calculate. Obviously we can calculate, but it's one of those things because they're liquid already. It's not really an egg per se. It's more in pounds, and it's quite significant. But I was telling someone yesterday we use about 14 to 15,000 pounds of bacon alone. It's some pretty incredible numbers, and it goes up. As the store volume goes up, it goes up pretty quickly. So it's. I put up a list every year, and everybody's in shock in the amount of butter and eggs and hash browns and pancakes that we put out. It's pretty impressive.
I love that. So you share those numbers internally with your staff, so they sort of get a
we
sense
have a
of
newsletter on a monthly basis.
The scale of what you're doing. I love. We do something similar at Restaurant 365 in terms of how many invoices have we processed, right? How many bills have we paid? Because you start to see those numbers exponentially grow as the business grows, and it's
amazing.
It's impactful, for sure.
It's like how many houses could you have built with all of the pancakes that you make in a year?
Oh gosh. Not to veer off our favorite thing is when we used to have National Pancake Day. We give out free short stacks for a cause, and we'll give out close to 3,000 short stacks sometimes. So short stacks, 3 pancakes. So you're talking about 9,000 pancakes getting cooked in a matter of 15 to 16 hours. It's a pretty incredible feat to accomplish, and we have some really good pancakes.
When is National Pancake Day? How did this is not a date I have on my calendar.
It changes a little bit, so it's because it's an owned sort of day by IHOP. It really, it's typically always on a Tuesday, generally speaking, right around Mardi Gras time period. And this year we're pretty excited. We're partnering up with Feeding America, and so it's we love working with any organizations that have to do with children and kids and supporting families, and so this is a pretty good cause that we're excited about. I don't have the exact date in front of me right this second. But,
That's all right. I put you on the spot. But so is this a company-wide initiative, or just your franchise group, or is it all IHOPs?
Yeah, it is company-wide, so nationwide, and it's one of those things that are near and dear to every franchisee's heart. We also apply it locally, so we don't necessarily just look at it at a national level, but if there's partners for Feeding America, if there's a kids organization that does a similar or a partnership, the money that's getting raised, the food that's being collected, all stays local to the franchise itself. So it's a pretty exciting thing, and really helps connect with the local community. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's get into your origin story a little bit. Well, the story of your company, right? How did this whole thing get started, and what is JHG? What does that stand for?
Well, it stands for Jamal Holding Group, which is my last name. This is a very, very long story, but my first job ever in the U.S. After we immigrated to this country was a busboy at IHOP, and my brother was a server at IHOP, and we weren't there for very long, but we had a great experience and a great relationship with the franchisee that owned that location that we worked at, and we had stepped away and went off and did other things and started college and everything else. And one day we got a call from that franchisee and says, "Hey, you guys were great." And we had stayed in contact with him, and he said, "There's a great opportunity for you guys in Grand Rapids, Michigan. One of my partners is wanting to sell one of these locations, and that's his only one in Michigan. And would you be interested in?" And the journey started back then in about 2006 or so, and we took over our first location here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it's been a great journey. It's a lot of people don't realize that the restaurant industry provides a lot of opportunity for people. We were able to build homes from it, go to college, get our MBAs, and build a family and support our future generations, and so. I made a very, very long story extremely short, but it's started out with IHOP somehow, some way. We kind of, went full circle and came back, and it's been a great partnership since.
I love stories like this because, to your point, the restaurant industry can be a great journey. And Rich, you could speak to that. Like, your journey's been very similar to mine, and we started in the trenches, and here we are now on this podcast. I don't know how we got here.
Grow up in the business, swear it off instantly, just like, it's the last thing I want to do. I spent every summer working for my parents in their bagel shop. Everybody else is on the beach. I'm sitting on Long Island, getting up at 4 a.m. to go make bagels. Of course, I swear off food service. Fast forward to living in New York City and doing the stereotypical waiting tables and bartending, and just realizing how much you connect with it, the people, the food, the guests, kind of tying it all together. It's just like there's something special about it that just makes you, kind of every time you think you step away, you get pulled back in. I mean, I got out of running kitchens for 15 years, came over to the 365 side, and now I get to talk to restaurant owners every day. So it's, you're never fully out of it. Even when you take one step out, you still got one foot back in it.
It's just a different kind of kitchen.
It's a weird adrenaline rush, right? You get a weird adrenaline rush when you get back into the restaurant sometimes. And I'm not, obviously I'm not there 24/7, but, over the holidays, etc., I'm there helping out. And you get that, the heart pumping, and you're like, all right, let's knock it out. Let's get all these customers what they want and get them happy and fed and, back out into the world basically. And it's a weird feeling when everything's humming. There's like a nice little tick to it that things are just moving smoothly, and it's a lot of fun.
So you said your brother was a server and you were a busboy. I'm curious, what's the tip out policy when it's between brothers? Do you get more? Do you get less?
As long as I bust his tables first, then I get more.
Okay. So it's basically the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I mean, you and I have talked about this before, Willie, but I don't think as an industry we do a good job of promoting that journey, right? Like that there is a path forward if you want it, if you work hard, right? There are outcomes that can happen in this industry that I don't think people are aware of, and your story is a perfect testament to that.
Thank you.
So is yours,
Thank you.
Rich.
Yeah, I mean, it's those things that you come up in the business and you kind of like learn little bits about it kind of as you're growing through it. You're growing up and you start to see the business in a different way. I guess, like, was there anything that you like, now from running the restaurants that you wish you would have known like way back then when you were like, bussing or kind of along your career?
I mean, there's so much that you've accumulated over the years, and the funny thing is, I tell people, I learned. I wish I knew the smells and the sounds of a restaurant early on, because it just makes you that much more efficient. So if anybody's ever cooked, or done anything, the difference between a toast burning versus a waffle burning versus an egg burning versus an actual fire if something's happening, and so and the noises, that rhythm that I speak about all the time to a lot of my colleagues is, there's a certain rhythm that you can immediately tell. This is running smoothly. We're going to knock it out of the park today. Versus a sort of a different noise. And I wish I had those. You accumulate over the years, right? And so I wish someone had downloaded that for me, day one, and said, here's all these things that they're just second nature that you need to know. If you know them, it makes the rest of it easy, right? You're able to immediately know, hey, I heard this noise. I know this is a server that needs help with this thing or that thing. And to me, those are the things that natural instinct that builds over time. I wish I could have accumulated that early on, because the rest of it we can learn, right? We can learn how to make pancake batter. We can learn how to properly cook a pancake. All that stuff is learned, versus that natural instinct is a built over time thing. And even the business stuff, right? P&L statements, financials, all that stuff is very, it's a very sort of objective learning opportunity, but the rest of it is just some things you build, scenarios you build over time, and conversations you have with customers that you build over time, and you can start connecting dots and relationships and everything else, and that is the toughest thing to not have on day one, especially once you become an operator, an owner. You're learning as you go, and so you're just going, okay, it's let's see what tomorrow brings.
Always got to be ready for a fresh new day. And I used to tell people, especially working in the kitchen, it was like, it's close quarters on the line, and you've got to learn how to dance with each other. And, inevitably in the beginning, you're always bumping into each other. And then after a while, you just see that like becomes that finely tuned machine of everybody going. I mean, 10,000 pancakes in a day. Obviously, your crew has got that down to a science of knowing who's going where, kind of like the silent communication that all happens. So it's awesome.
Quiet noise, right?
Exactly. And then just that hum, just when everything's going the right way and service is firing on all cylinders like that. Those are the pieces that I miss from being in the restaurant, when everything's going just the right direction. You're like, it feels so good, and afterwards you're like both exhausted and like excited. You're still riding that high. It's definitely a great combination, but I think that's part of what makes restaurant life almost so addictive, right? Like it's that thing where you want to kind of have that feeling, and you have to think about that feeling when it's 4 a.m. and you're doing inventory and somebody's called out sick, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to plan out your day, but knowing you've got those really high highs definitely helps kind of get you through the motions.
It's definitely, I think people are attracted to it because of that problem solving nature to it, right? Like every day there's a new challenge, there's something new I've got to figure out. It's funny, you talk about, you can never get that out of your system. My wife and I met in restaurants, and we still were in the kitchen, say behind, coming around. Like it never goes away. But I also like your sentiment about sort of the 6 senses of the restaurant industry, right? Like understanding the smells and the sounds and the tastes. I think that's I've never heard it really spoken about that way. And I will give a pro tip to everybody listening. If somebody's walking through the dining room sautéing garlic, there's usually probably a drain backing up or a sewage problem in the restaurant. So,
Yeah, there's certain smells you don't want to have an innate knowledge of what
Yes.
they are. Grease trap backing up is a smell I didn't want to know about, and now I can never purge from my
you
brain.
cannot unlearn that smell. Very true. Very true. So Walid, I'm curious, what's next? It sounded like you're planning on some growth. What's sort of the next mountain you want to climb here?
Yeah, so when we first started in the West Michigan area, our thought has been, we'd like to consolidate the market. There's a few franchisees in the area that are that own a couple other locations as well, and so we started out that plan in about 2015 or so, and we've been slowly acquiring. We built our first location as well, and unfortunately, COVID got in the way. And we're hoping that by the end of this year that we can restart that plan as we've sort of restructured and organized our company to be ready again for that growth. So we'd like to acquire some of the existing locations, and then we'd like to be able to develop another location. IHOP has some really cool ideas, and especially some newer concepts and prototypes that we want to try out. All my locations are in the 20 plus years old, and so it'll be nice to have something that's pretty cool and refreshing looking, and so we're excited about that. I think IHOP does a really good job with that, with their development and their growth initiatives, and so really that's the next step. And then sometime over the next 3 to 5 years, and then we'll see where that takes us. We've got some great conversations with other franchisees in other parts of the state as well, and it'll be fun. We're young, and the restaurant industry is tough, but we're a young team. My entire management team is pretty young, and they all have a lot of energy and motivation, and so we'd like to see the growth for the next 20 some years as well. So
Nice.
And are a lot of your managers in the position they're in, having started, as servers, as another position in your restaurant? It seems like you're clearly invested in promoting from within.
Yeah, I mean, I have my actual office financial manager. She started out as a server or a host when she was 15, and then went off to college for a period of time, came back, and was serving for a while. And I had approached her and I said, hey, look, you're very good at what you do, not from just a serving perspective, but you have some knowledge, and would you like to try an opportunity as well to maybe become a bookkeeper or help me in the office? And so then she loved it, went off back to college, got her accounting degree, and now she's kind of internal. I've got managers that were 16, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and now they're GMs, and some people want to follow in their footsteps, and those stories. And I also have stories that people that have gone through that path with me, and then have gone also off to do other things, and to this day I still connect with them because they worked for me for 8, 10 plus years, and they still contact me back and say, I appreciate everything that you've done. I've appreciated the exposure that you've given me from a management perspective or a business perspective, and now I get to use it at my current job, even though it's not necessarily be in the restaurant industry, but the portion that I learned, I'm able to apply to my current position, or the dedication that you had. I mean, we're a tough industry, and so that builds a certain thick skin, and so it allows people to learn how to adapt through life as well. And so I love those stories, and I have so many of them. And like I said, some still continue working for me. Some of them have gone off and done some great things, and it's always great seeing them somewhere random. Like, oh my God, listening to their story and going, it's pretty cool. It makes me proud, even though it's not necessarily, I shouldn't be taking all the credit. But
Well, it's like family, right? Restaurants are like family. I get it. I totally get it.
One big, giant, dysfunctional family. But
Yes.
it's that thing, too, where, you work with people, you find somebody that you can see great opportunity, and you want to, cultivate that and really help them grow. And then it's awesome when you get to, either find a place for them in your organization to help, kind of embrace that and really help, build them up, or knowing that you've kind of taken them to a certain point and then they end up moving on to somewhere else, but you still keep in touch, you still get to see them, and it's like that little bit of a success story of kind of I was involved in this person's development, and seeing how they take that over time, because they take the good with you, they take the bad with you, they take the things that they learn from you, and then they pass that along the way. So it's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
You had mentioned something when you guys were in the booth at NRA, the National Restaurant Association show, where your very first location, you had gone in and you had kind of like some cleanup to do, kind of putting in some like systems and things like that. What were some of the things that you saw then, or some of the systems that you're using now? I mean, to not only make sure that things are going in the right direction, but looking ahead at the plans that you have for yourself that you want to grow. What are some of those systems that you've put in place, whether it's tech or otherwise, to kind of help fuel your growth?
Yeah, so from day one for us, when we looked at systems investments, it wasn't necessarily, it might not apply for one restaurant because we're so small and there's, it's a pretty big investment in infrastructure. But the thought was always, how do I operate 4 or 5 or 6 locations with ease? And so technology was, and I'm a huge advocate for technology. I'm on part of the technology committee for IHOP, and so even things as simple as putting in kitchen display systems or tablets or even Wi-Fi back in 2006-07. Who thought about putting guest Wi-Fi in, right? But putting those things in to get that college student to come and sit and study here versus going to study somewhere else, putting structure in place to whether it's from a cleanliness perspective or SOP perspective and so on and so forth. Those are all things that we invested in early on, digitized a lot of information to make it easier for our staff to get a hold of. And then lastly, it was really back office technology was probably the biggest thing for us. Back then, 2006-07, these conversations weren't important back then. We still I still remember some franchisees that fax over, their P&L statements, right? And so payroll reports. And so for me, I wanted more time in the dining room. I wanted more time within the 4 walls. I don't want to be sitting in the office. And so how do I expedite the amount of time I spend in the back in the office? And so we started installing technologies. This was prior to R365 for us, but we had installed different systems and invested heavily, for a restaurant to invest in the $20,000-$30,000 for one location. But what that made it turned the next location significantly easier. All I had to do was copy paste, right? And it was in a matter of a day of taking over a new location or opening up a new location. You had everything installed, everything ready. Staff were able to adopt very easily, and we bought ourselves a lot more time to focus on the customer and the operations themselves. And so, it sped up table turns, it sped up cook times, it sped up, it improved guest relations. It improved morale just because people were able to get the data that they needed in a fast enough time to do something about it, not just 2-3 weeks down the line finding out, oh shoot, we messed up and we need to fix this. It was more proactive versus reactive, and that in the restaurant industry is money, right? So it's
it is money, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That transparency is huge and uber critical.
Yeah.
So is there anything you're looking to leverage technology for that you're currently not using?
I would like to, I'm very hesitant still, but I would like to have incorporated AI within the next 2 to 3 years in a format that maybe, I don't necessarily want to take over a job, but I want it to be a little more informative or speed up the process, right? If my mind doesn't necessarily work that way in the sense of envisioning what AI would look like. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this industry. But but if I could, I like the idea of AI. I like the idea of robotics. I got the chance to, when I was at the NRA show in Chicago, to see some of these robotics, and it's amazing. Yes, they're probably years away from being able to implement in an IHOP, but like you talk about the 10,000 pancakes, right? Having a robot that just boom, 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 and almost perfectly all the time. That on its own, it's not about eliminating a position, but more of how do we make it more efficient, more customer centric, more because we're a brand, we need to be across the board, all locations exactly the same consistency, and so I'm more excited about the robotics side of things because I don't necessarily understand AI, but robotics is a little more tangible and everything else, and so we've some of our locations already started testing, even the busing robot where they come and take, they roll around with plates or drop off food, and it's like I said, it's there. It's got a lot of kinks still, but it'll be pretty exciting to see that in a full service restaurant, because we see it in casual, fast service and other concepts. We can see it being implemented, but in full service restaurant, how do we incorporate it within the full service concept? Not just, I don't want to eliminate servers, I don't want to eliminate cooks, because that's where the core of that business is, the ability to cook from scratch and make it the way the guest wants as an experience as a whole. So I'd be excited to see where that comes, where that future is going to be, basically.
That's awesome. There's so much. Restaurants, I always feel like the last stand for technology. It's like we went from the handwritten checks to finally moving into like a point of sale system, and then so many places now are even cashless because they're just trying to keep things as digital as possible. So to be able to think about it from kind of looking ahead, not replacing your people, but making their lives a little bit easier. Something that's going to come in and just make pancakes and flip perfect pancakes every single time. But I always kind of have that, like that cartoon playing Futurama in the back of my head, where it's just kind of like, the robots take on a totally different personality. And then I'm just picturing, like Flippy is out, off on the side of the corner smoking a cigarette. So just the cartoon that plays out in my head when we think about technology and how it could make our lives easier, but also knowing that it's going to be a real piece of the business soon enough. It's going to start getting layered in everywhere we go.
Yeah, I think for me, AI is about automation and consistency. If we can solve for those two variables, because I think you're right, Walid, you can't take the human element out of restaurants. It's just not going to work, right? There's a certain there's a feel, right? You've got to have that within the restaurant. But it's funny, we did an in-app survey on like AI probably about a year ago now, when it was like just emerging and everybody's talking about it, and just to get people's take on it. And one answer we got from a store manager just said Skynet. That's all they said. It was just like Terminator the movie. That was their response to AI. But it's here to stay, and I do think there are going to be some pretty great gains from it. And on the robotics front, I don't know if you read. I think I read this morning that LG just bought a 51% stake in Bear Robotics, which is one of the big robotics companies at NRA. I think they make those Busboy robots.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to accelerate growth very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm curious
cool.
too, kind of the same idea, at least as far as like AI. Biggest things that I've always been nervous about with that is like the AI hallucinations. Like it does something off on its own, does something kind of weird. I guess kind of before we get to the AI world, and we're still kind of living what we got now. What's something a little bit embarrassing, but kind of like that you've learned from? What was like a big failure on the restaurant owning side of things that you're kind of like, that was a swing and a miss, kind of what we've talked about enough fun stuff and the positive things. I want to know, like, what's that thing where you just kind of like smacked yourself on the forehead afterwards, but you learned a lot from it as a restaurant owner?
I mean, the list of probably failures is a lot bigger than the list of successes, and I think most of it comes to me from I want to say marketing initiatives that didn't necessarily go the way we wanted to, and so I don't necessarily I wouldn't call necessarily a one big failure. I would call a series of many failures, and trying to understand how do I locally engage with the customer, because I am a brand. Because we are a brand, I mean, as an IHOP, and we tend to not have the same reaction from guests that a local mom and pop shop does. And so, we've had initiatives where we've taken, and the reaction from the guest was not what you would have expected. If it's a marketing initiative collaborating with a local business or operation or a local team, and it sort of just blew up in our faces, and you go, what just happened? And I understand it, and okay, this is how do we walk this back, and it's tough. It's a that's that, and again, like I said, it's I wouldn't necessarily call it failure as much as a learning point in time for me, where I learned, okay, there's an importance to focus groups. There's an importance for doing test runs. There's an importance to truly understand every aspect of whatever initiative that you're about to do, because just saying let's do this is not necessarily, that mentality doesn't necessarily how do I say? I can say let's do this. I'm going to go buy another restaurant. That's an easy decision because I'll figure it out. I'll do it. But we can't just always say let's do this when it comes to marketing initiatives or when it comes to operational initiatives. That let's do a test run. Let's figure out does this work? Does it not work? Those are this is probably what I would consider a failure for me is the fact that initially, because I didn't have any patience. Right, you're young and you're excited. You're like, no, let's do it. Let's run way ahead what we should have, and then you get these slaps in the face where you go, okay, what did I just do, right? And it's so all I would tell people is like, never say no to an idea, but truly sit down, understand it, talk to your staff too, talk to your teammates, talk to the younger ones, the older ones, etc., because they give you feedback that when I was younger, maybe I had a different feedback, and then my older staff were probably like, no, this is not going to cut it. And then nowadays, I'm always picking the brain of the younger staff members, because I'm like, okay, well, these are our future demographic, and I need to know what works and what doesn't work. And it's amazing the answers that you get and the feedback that you get. So that to me is probably biggest failure, is not getting enough feedback when I was first starting out and thinking that I had it right. That's like, it's like, no, I'm the one who's right. I'm the owner. I get to decide. It's more of unfortunate ego or pride or whatever you want to call it, playing into your decision making. So.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds a lot like a chef that I know when he was younger, who used to have a really bad temper, and kind of screaming was just the only volume that existed. And then I remember one time my dad came to the restaurant, and the chef's dad came to the restaurant, and just kind of standing there shaking his head, just kind of like, what are you doing? Like, if you're only going to be at one volume, then that's just what it turns into, white noise in the background. Like, everybody just starts to ignore it, doesn't have any impact. And then the other side of that then became, I learned how to get really quiet, and then when I got really mad, let people know. But kind of those things that you wish you knew, like you said earlier, back then, that now is kind of just life lessons. I think if somebody's listening to this right now, and they're interested in getting into the restaurant space, or maybe they're working in the restaurants and they kind of have that future goal of, I want to own my own place. I want to buy into a franchise. I want to open up my own thing. I guess what's like kind of a little nugget of wisdom that you would throw at them?
I'll tell them that it's a very tough business, but it is very rewarding. And so keep that. What I have in my life is there's always at the end a goal, right? And that's my focus point. Have a focus point that you can continue to use to feed you that energy to overcome some of the obstacles that come from potentially purchasing a business, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It took us 1.5 to 2 years to be able to become franchisees, because there's a lot of interview processes. There's obviously the steps to get financing. You work with family members to maybe help you achieve that financing. There's a lot of tough conversations, but the end result and the end goal was stuck, and this was between me and my brother, and so that was on the top of the list every day, right? We want to become franchise owners. We want to become one of the top franchisees in the system. We want to be owners of more than one location. We had this put a plan together that you truly believe in, not a plan that, I want to make money, because that's not the restaurant industry, right? Anybody that's been in the restaurant industry, it's not just about making money. Yes, obviously, like I said, it does provide, but have a plan that you truly believe in, and you go, okay, this is what's gonna energize me in those down dark days when I'm in the kitchen for 18 hours straight, going, what am I doing to myself? I'm knee deep in grease and covered in pancake batter, and it's, I gotta go change my clothes so I can come back in another 2 hours and another shift, right? And I'm sure many of us have had what felt like a 30-40 hour shift in a row, and going, what am I doing to myself? Well, the nice thing about it, right? There's always going to be the sort of effect of, oh, I've succeeded, I've accomplished this 30, 40 hour shift, and I accomplished what I wanted. I am one step closer to my goal, right? And whether it's you're a manager and want to become an owner, or you are an owner and you want to expand, it's all the same, right? You just have to have a certain goal that you want to meet, have some timeline, put specifics for it. Don't just dream and not write it down, right? It needs to be written down. It needs to be concrete. It needs to be, objective and believable, and then surround yourself by plenty of people that are smarter than you, because those are the people that you can lean on and say, hey, look, what are your thoughts about this? And even if they give you one little tiny tidbit of information that might benefit you, that is worth having that person around forever. And thankfully in this entire journey we've had, whether it's family members, parents, etc., friends, and then colleagues and mentors. To this day, it's been 19 years. Still, I reach out to the same exact people every time there's some sort of an obstacle in the way, and I go, hey, and they go, what's your, let's talk about what's the end goal here. Do you know what it is? Tell me what it is. If you don't know what it is, you're not going anywhere. So, and thankfully this started with my dad, and it's been, knock on wood, it's resulted in what we've wanted this entire time. So, sorry for the long response. It's a very big response, but I think it's, the good thing is, if you want to become a restaurant owner, get into the restaurant industry soon, and learn from others, because the restaurant industry is extremely risky. And so, if you go spend a year to 2 years with some other owner and work hard and learn from their mistakes, that can speed up the process that much more versus going and learning some on your own. It's okay, but it just makes things a little bit tougher and longer, and learning from people's mistakes is not a bad thing. So.
No, not at all. I like the idea that there's a benefit to working for a bad operator and a good operator, right? So you talked about having a plan. I'm curious, have you written your budgets for the 2025 year yet?
We have. So we typically start doing that process in October, November of the year before. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, restaurant, and I'm not trying to talk anyone up, but Restaurant 365's accounting system is the main reason as to why life is easier in the restaurant industry. Anybody that's ever done accounting for the restaurant industry, it used to be a lot easier. It's become way more complex with all these DSPs and online fees and all kinds of other stuff. And so, back then you had to use QuickBooks or paper P&L statements or Excel spreadsheets and to input and export and all kinds of spreadsheets, and to come up with the data. By the time you're done, it's like months have passed by before you reconcile your accounts. Well, with Restaurant 365 since 2018, you click of a button and you're kind of good to go, and you've got a P&L statement. And so to create a budget, you click of a download, you just go sit there, tweak your budget, upload, and you're good to go. You can do it really in a matter of a couple hours if you want to, and so those are the systems that have made it easier to go, okay, now I can put this on the side and then go back and focus on my operations versus sitting for weeks, if not longer, at a time, sometimes going, okay, let me go through this budget and calculate and put, who wants to do that, right? Who wants to do math when they can have a system to do it for them? So, yes, we try to do our entire budget a couple months in advance before the end of the year, and thankfully we've got the technology to help with that.
Yeah, I mean,
awesome.
You mentioned Restaurant 365. I know it, kind of, sort of. Was a customer, worked for them. What's been the impact to your team? Like, do they use the tool? They get to see things. Like, how has Restaurant 365 maybe made their lives a little bit better?
So I'll give you two versions of the story. One's above store level and one within the store. So when I first decided to implement R365, my bookkeeper was extremely stressed. She was, bookkeepers have their habits. They go, they do this on this day, they do this on that day, etc. It's not, don't mess with it. They have all the Excel spreadsheets and the math and the post-its.
They don't like change.
They don't like change. Exactly. They hate it. And I think we started the transition in early January, and then by the end of January, we were pretty much done. And by early February, my bookkeeper goes, "Oh my God, you've bought me back 6-7 hours a week. Where now I can focus on what some of the other duties that I have." And so it's always great to hear that, from a bookkeeper especially. So because then you can go, okay, now I have peace of mind. I know I'm going to get proper data, and she's not stressed anymore. And so
that's good. I'm glad you didn't say, "Okay, good. Now you can do HR." Now you've got all this free time. Take on this role.
So it's been great from above store level. Now within the stores itself, right? I have two different versions. I have the sort of older generation, where I know how the restaurant runs, and I've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years, and I can do the math in my head very quickly. But the thing that's cool is I noticed them adopting it because they have all this data, they're able to use that tool even faster and accomplish what they want faster, so they can go focus on the restaurants. From the younger crowd, these individuals are still learning how to maybe read a P&L statement or build a P&L statement or forecast labor or sales. And so this tool is helping them understand it a little bit better. So instead of having to go every day to them hey, you're not getting the math, now they have a tool that they can play around with and go, okay, yep, this tool is helping me figure out the math and the labor matrix. And so the younger crowd is building their own experience using the tool. The older crowd already has the experience, so now they're buying themselves a little bit more time. So it's pretty cool. And then the staff love it too, because I love announcements in R365. I know it's such a small, tiny feature, but announcements is my way of engaging with the staff. 140 members, I can't see them every time. And so even sending a small, hey, happy holidays, or hey, good job, we had 30 days with no incidents or whatever. The moment I go to the store, someone always comes up to me oh my God, I read this announcement, and is this true or is this not true, or are we going to be doing this, or is this a new uniform that we're going to be wearing that I sent out a memo about? And so even simple feature that nobody thinks about, but they have the app, they get to see everything, and this app is ever evolving. I mean, it's amazing the fact that I remember what it used to look like and now what it looks like, and it's amazing.
We don't talk
the amount
about
of information that you can provide at hand, right? And so so it's always cool to see all these features. And so to me, I get to see all of them and use all of them. And I know there's some that I don't use that I'm really excited to be able to use in the future, even like forms and task management and everything else. Having that one-stop shop, oh my gosh, it did just, I'm sure you guys all remember as you started out in the industry, you kept getting a login every week, right? A new login for this website, a new login for that website, a new login for payroll, for HR, for hiring. Now I got one login almost for 90% of everything that we use, and then a couple other logins, and that's it for my manager at least. So it's significant reduction in time and sitting in front of a chair on a computer, and in front of a computer on a chair, and it's I can't wait to see what else can be that we can implement. I'm pretty excited. On top of all the other good stuff, the inventory and et cetera, and stuff that in the back end that we don't really talk about a lot anymore.
I feel a podcast announcement incoming soon, Walid, going out to the staff to let them know.
We'll see if they want to hear about more.
Yeah, they're like, we have to listen to him all the time. We're not listening to that podcast. So hot take. What is a trend in the industry that you would like to see just go away?
I've said this a lot. I want to eliminate any trends that don't get to engage with the guest enough, and so I've said this before. I'm not a huge fan of curbside pickup. I know it blew up for a while there, and the reason behind it is we live in the Midwest, so it's always cold outside, and so months, no, we'll call it October through March, my staff is running to give the food and then run back in because they're freezing and didn't want to put on a coat and a hat and the gloves just to, negative 2 degree weather to give. So there's no engagement, and so I don't know. I love to go. I love delivery. I love all that stuff. There's still some engagement there. Curbside seems to me that one of those trends where, we're even testing something right now where you can pre-order before you arrive to the restaurant to dine in. So as soon as you walk in, you can say, I arrived, I've been sat, and then the food just shoots out to the kitchen. So, and it starts cooking. So that stuff is all still cool because I get to still talk to you and say, hey, how was everything? And was everything okay? Or I get to talk to the delivery driver and say, hey, look, please make sure this is the stuff for this customer, etc. So there's still engagement. Curbside's like not even a drive-through window. It's not. I wouldn't even. It's one of those very unusual.
Leave it on the hood of my car.
Leave it on the hood of my car.
Exactly. Yeah. And so so I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and maybe it's because I'm in a different concept, but. That's just one of those trends.
That's a good hot take.
That's a good hot take.
Yeah, but I got to say, I love the idea of being able to like place my order ahead of time, and then when I get there, just kind of check in like I'm here. Because typically, when I'm rolling through an IHOP, I'm ravenous, and I'm just like, this sounds so good right now. I just want to get there and have it in front of me. So Marc, you and I might have to make a little road trip. We pop in, test things out
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very complex process still because there's a lot of geofencing and I don't know, but hopefully we can figure all this stuff out, and very, very limited testing. So we'll see what comes about. But I think it's a great idea. I think people are always on the move, especially in the morning.
Oh, totally. Like I said, you're guest number 1, so you have to come back for our 100th episode, and you can give us a full update on where that landed. Yeah. Well, look, Walid, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you listening, you can find Walid on LinkedIn. Check out his locations. They're in Western Michigan. And, of course, IHOP.com if you want to find out about these promotions or pancakes they're cooking up. And for everybody that's listening, we hope you have a great day wherever you're at and wherever your restaurant may be.
Don't forget, you guys can find us anywhere, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So like and subscribe wherever you choose to listen. Follow us across all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And, of course, you can always visit us at restaurant365.com. And remember, if you got time to lean, you've got time to listen to our podcast while you clean. Catch you guys next time.